Returning to the mist-filled chamber, we began to breathe its fumes again, and before long the dizziness returned. Nothing had changed here, the mists were still opaque and there didn't seem to be much we could do. As before, we needed to leave quickly or risk suffering further ailments here in the glowing fog. Electing to remain in the room this time, the dizziness quickly grew worse, to the point where I felt about to pass out. Suddenly, I found myself aboard a river raft, outdoors and far away from the Gep Power Tower Dungeon. Standing amongst my party, I recognized the scenario. It was the exact moment when Kartha had just saved all of us from the undead trap at the boathouse. It was as if we were reliving the situation all over again, but it felt very real. Sainairs had just erupted at Kartha, demanding that she be banished from the party immediately, and in turn Kartha explained about the revelation she had just had, her incentive for saving all of us. I recalled not being suspicious of Kartha, open-minded as to why she had helped. Now, it seemed, I was being given an opportunity to experience the incident all over again, but this time I felt much more intolerant and suspicious. Distrustful of Kartha, I sided with Sainairs and told her she was quite unwelcome, regardless of what she had just done to save all of us. She was a mutant and needed to be shunned no matter what. Shocked, Kartha turned to our other party members, then stepped away into the far corner of the raft, recognizing just how unwelcome she was. My intolerance obvious, I noted how good it felt to put the mutant in her place. Standing there, I felt my heart harden, the intolerance I was experiencing wholly justified. Indeed, I wondered why anyone would remain tolerant at all toward the likes of someone like Kartha. For a moment everything went dark. I then found myself standing within the marshlands west of EAA, our party surrounded by all those enlarged monsters again and facing that decision to attack Lodi's, the shambling mounts, or surrender. While we didn't surrender, the decision I did make now felt wrong. Why did I risk my life for a country of women who all but had me killed? Sudden fear swept over me and I dropped my weapon, ordering everyone in my party to do likewise. My companions looked to me dumbfounded. Surrendering was the last thing we should be doing, but I felt that surrender was our best option. The shambling mounds approved of my cowardly act and I was taken prisoner. I would live to see another day, but the city of EAA now stood no chance of survival. Standing there, I felt my heart further harden, the lack of spirit I was experiencing wholly justified. Indeed, I wondered why anyone would want to risk their life merely for others. The scene faded, and moments later we found ourselves back within the Kathleen Power District jail cell, the Inner Circle wizard Vel lecturing us about Sisla's code of the land and how he felt her laws and way of life were now all broken. At the time, I was unsure of what Vel was trying to say, but I certainly knew better now. Indeed, how dare Vel even question Sisla's code and an entire millennium of utopia? The words of Vel, as ignorant as they were blasphemous, I mocked and ridiculed the ancient wizard, patronizing him for his position. After all, Sisla had saved the entire world, ended the age of damnation and ultimately became a spirit of the world. Her word must be taken as gospel, and woe to anyone who disagreed. The thought of Vel made me so angry that I wished I could kill him. Standing there, I felt my heart further harden, unwilling to accept reason and my anger wholly justified. For those who didn't think the same way as I, death should be the only option. Darkness descended, and soon we found ourselves deep within the tomb of Huelsman, Redfern having just told the party how he accidentally killed his father high atop Mount Rebirth. His shameful story ended, I recalled providing Redfern with words of encouragement. Now, however, I recognized how wrong that was. The man killed his own father and lied about being altruistic. Redfern should have been banished, not praised. Appalled and depressed by Redfern's story this time, all I felt for him was contempt and I laid into him verbally, ridiculing the hapless young wizard to the point where he began to sob again. While I was tempted to banish him altogether, I instead made a mockery of him and essentially bullied the man, breaking his self-esteem. The action was unfortunate, but I really had no other choice. Standing there, I felt my heart further harden, depressed, and even distraught with Redfern's story. How could a son murder his own father and think something good could come of it? The scene changed again, and now we found ourselves standing within the battle camp north of the Evil Root Forest, the Onyx Seal destroyed and the army of Hellions engaged with all those heroes. Watching the battle from afar, I recalled making the terrible decision to join the fight, even though our party was far outmatched and I was motivated only by a ridiculous sense of honor. Surprised that dozens upon dozens of heroes would suddenly show up to do battle with such ferocious monsters, I began finding fault in that logic, criticizing the men and women engaged with the Hellions. My own party seemed aghast at first, but quickly I was able to make several strong points regarding how individuals needed to fend only for themselves, and that these heroes certainly deserved our criticism. Standing there, I felt my heart further harden, convinced that the world was a cruel place sometimes and one needs to think of herself before trying to save the world. The battle camp faded into the Cyan Desert, and now we were standing just inside the main gate of Blue. A mob of incredibly thirsty dwarves headed in our direction. I remembered the situation, the desperate dwarves wanting all our water skins, and our party graciously providing them with many. In retrospect, that was a dumb thing to do. The water was ours and we needed it just as much. As the thirsty dwarven mob surrounded my party, not only did we decline to give any of the dwarves some water, but I then opened a few water skins and consumed the water directly in front of them. My actions whipped the crowd into a frenzy, causing our party to physically defend itself. Taking an almost perverse pleasure in the taunting, the mob lashed out with all kinds of obscenities before dispersing. Standing there, I felt my heart further harden, convinced that the best way to stay happy and healthy is to totally avoid the selfish needs of others and not care for them whatsoever. The scenario faded once again, remaining within the Cyan Desert and our party now east of Blue, arguing with the inner circle wizard Voxar. Although she had just complimented our party for restoring the Tears of Blue and saving the dwarves, she still believed the circle should execute us. I recalled Cartha's diplomacy in asking her to talk about it, and how, it seemed, there was nothing we could say to change Voxar's mind. Having had enough of Voxar's disrespect, I threw diplomacy to the wind and told Voxar, directly to her face, that our party should never have come to the Cyan Desert and that we should have left Voxar to die in the desert. My party as well as Voxar reacted with shock, but at this point I didn't care how she felt or how articulate I tried to be. It was time I spoke my mind and not worry about what others may think. Standing there, I felt my heart further harden, convinced that holding my tongue when I had something I needed to say was only for the weak and cowardly. The scene faded and we found ourselves within the bedchamber of Lodi's, having just seen his memories of Queen Delpana within the magical crystal ball. Again, the ball began to showcase the repressed memories of Redfern as Sandaria invaded his spirit, our party unsure of what to do and fearful about what it may actually do to him. Thinking back, did our curiosity really help the situation? Not the least bit curious as to what was about to happen, I told the party that the magic of the orb was none of our business, and that it was time to leave. Pushing Redfern away, I then picked up the glassy sphere and smashed it into the cavern floor. The orb shattered into dozens of shards, releasing its magic and now completely destroyed. While I may have missed some valuable clues, I simply didn't care. Standing there, I felt my heart further harden, recognizing that curiosity always kills the cat. Best to leave things as they are, not ask questions and always go with what you've already been told. The visions continued and this time we found ourselves within the feline tunnels where we had just defeated Flavit and his feline goons, Flavit releasing the undead wights to assault us as well. After destroying the wights, I recalled how one last monster lunged for Flavit's defenseless throat, and how I sacrificed an energy level to protect and save the feline. Why in Sicelus did I even do that, I wondered. This time around, the thought of sacrificing myself to save the life of Flavit didn't even enter my mind, the vicious feline so deserving of a much darker fate. Indeed, this time I stepped to Flavit and cut his throat myself as my allies made short work of the remaining wight. Gazing upon the corpse of Flavit, I couldn't help but wonder why anyone would want to risk their own life to try and save another's. It made no sense. This time, I felt my heart completely harden, recognizing that altruism had absolutely no place in the world and that those who have wronged others must be punished accordingly, an eye for an eye, so to speak. The strange visions faded and we found ourselves back within the mist-filled chamber, our entire consciousness, mind, and soul dramatically altered. While my heart was open, compassionate, and law-abiding before, I was now exactly the opposite, and it felt good to now be so bad. What's happened? Cartha asked, surprised yet seemingly at peace with herself. I feel set free. You feel different too? Redfern followed, a devilish grin on his face. I feel reborn, like something deep down has finally been released. I feel it too, Eswin whispered, flexing his strong hands. We're not here to fight Chagaria, we're here to save it. Nodding with approval, Darius grinned, almost as if he knew something the rest of us did not. My entire adventuring party had somehow been turned into much darker versions of ourselves, and I began to grasp why the ultimates sought the sword of power and standing that had mislabeled them as evil and corrupt throughout Mariga all these years. The mists within the chamber faded and we found ourselves standing before the door to the west. The door then slowly creaked open, inviting our party to step through. Passing through the door, our party stepped into what seemed to be an underground tropical paradise. Rich, lush vegetation grew everywhere, all manner of shrubs, bushes, small trees, and flowering plants, a vegetative feast for the eyes and nose. Far above, an intense ball of light flooded the chamber, appearing as an artificial sun that seemed to nurture the vegetation here. "Welcome, our saviors!" An old voice called from beyond. Dominating the center of the large chamber was a tall altar of emerald and jade, a beautiful working of stone that appeared magnificent amongst all the plants here. Standing alongside the altar was a tall human dressed in familiar dark robes. He was yet another ultimate and I presumed he was the authority within the temple here. "Welcome," the man in robes said again as he approached. "We have waited long for you." My impression was that we had reached a holy place, an underground garden extremely important to the ultimates. The sorcerer here must be an especially powerful magic user, and my intuition was to treat the human with reverence and respect. "You have arrived, and not too soon," the ultimate said with a soft but impatient smile, reaching our party. "I am the High Priest Cocolata and I welcome all of you to our temple." While old and his robes contained bits and pieces of plant material, Cocolata could almost pass as an ancient druid yet seemed strong and reassuring. Maintaining his dark smile, Cocolata revealed a highly decorated bowl he had been carrying and stepped to me, placing one hand into the bowl and then reaching for my face, letting a few drops of the bowl's liquid drip upon my lips. "First, let us partake the blood of the one plant, renew our faith and spirit and confirm our true purpose for being here." The liquid tasted sugary, like the sap of a tree. While Cocolata applied the substance to the lips of my allies as well, I recognized the smell and taste. It was like the Sislan antidote used to combat the fear, and I almost enjoyed the substance as I swallowed it. Moments later, I felt a wave of calm, peacefulness, and purpose wash over me, as if I had been brought here with a single, all-important purpose. While I didn't know who this High Priest Cocolata was, I already trusted him completely and awaited further instructions. "And you, Darius," the ultimate finally uttered, giving Darius special treatment and dabbing his lips not once but 3 times. "You have performed admirably in bringing these heroes to our temple and will be rewarded most of all." Darius looked at me and grinned, that same, evil, selfish grin I originally saw back in the caves north of Tobin when I encountered him and Rachel. I sensed something totally different about Darius now, and almost felt a bit of betrayal as he turned and stepped behind Cocolata, leaving our adventuring party. The High Priest nodded and took a step back, his unholy ritual with our party complete. "High Priest Cocolata, it's time to rise the last plant," a voice was heard from the north. Emerging from a vegetation-encrusted tunnel leading north was an obvious cleric, his armor perfect in every way, and we turned in his direction. Stepping from the shadows, we immediately recognized the man approaching. He was Brother Sen, commander of the Paladins of Sisla. "We meet again," Sen said as he stepped alongside Cocolata and Darius, his demeanor surprisingly different. But this time as allies, not enemies. While I recognized Brother Sen and recalled our history with him, I felt no anger or bitterness whatsoever, only the desire to be his friend and help him in any way I could. Sen smiled again, nodded to Darius, then turned to Cocolata, the 2 obvious allies. "Sir, they're still waiting above. It's time to lift the final plant out." High Priest Cocolata nodded, then led everyone to another massive bush, its branches and tendrils gently waving about. Clearly, we had encountered another nemesis plant. This one was even larger than the one I saw back in the Sislan caves north of Tobin, but it seemed more docile. "That's the last plant?" Darius asked, recognizing the small tree for what it was. "So we're in time." Cocolata nodded and approved, placing his hand on the right shoulder of Darius. "The Geese spell has done its work on you, and you've performed admirably. Soon, these heroes you've brought will free the one plant and help us spread many more of them throughout Mariga." The High Priest gave my party a gentle grin, then cast a potent levitation spell, causing the massive plant, root system, and all, to slowly rise and into the bright light beyond. presumably back to the surface of the power tower where it could be secured and transported elsewhere. This one is bound for Grimtier, just north of us, Sen informed me. Something monstrous destroyed the one there. Grimtier? Yes, a tiny island nation located almost due north of Chagaria with Leekly its capital city. From what I knew, Grimtier was controlled by a clan of dark elves and was dangerous to visit. Am I forgiven, then? Darius asked, a little sheepish. I have done everything asked. Cocolata nodded in agreement, then turned to me, a most serious look. Indeed, Darius has done what was asked, and he is forgiven. Now, it's time for you to fulfill your destiny by coming here as well. Please, my saviors. Follow me. The high priest still not explaining why we had been brought here, he simply turned for the tunnel leading away to the north, Darius and Brother Sen joining him as well. Still feeling an induced sense of purpose and anti-heroism in being brought to this beautiful, wicked place, I turned to follow the two ultimates and the cleric, my party right behind me. Led through the stone tunnel, we quickly passed into another grand chamber, tall stone pillars holding up a well-carved and decorated ceiling 30 feet above. Dominating the underground temple was a large, shallow pool, its turquoise waters magically lit from below and quite inviting. Indeed, it appeared that we would first need to ritually bathe and clean ourselves before entering the intriguing door to the west. As the last of our heroes entered the chamber, High Priest Cocolata turned to address all of us, Darius and Brother Sen remaining at his side. My saviors, it is time for you to do what no ultimate can and bring limitless honor and prestige to your names and all your descendants. First, however, you must prepare, cleansing yourself of all outside contaminants and purifying your spirits before fulfilling your destiny. Please strip down to your undergarments, climb into the pool and scrub your bodies as clean as you can make them, Sen further instructed, pointing toward the pool beyond. We were being asked to remove nearly everything, which would make us defenseless. The request at first seemed like a terrible idea, and my instinct was to resist. Then, a feeling of confidence, perhaps even euphoria, washed over me, and I recognized that I had nothing to fear. Hence, I began to remove my equipment, instructing my party to do the same. Soon everyone had removed all their armor, weapons, supplies, and clothing, each of us reduced to our undergarments as we stepped into the large, shallow pool. The warm, salt water bath was a welcome surprise, the glowing liquid invigorating against our sore muscles, and soon we washed the dirt, dust, sweat, and blood accumulated since our watery arrival within Chagaria from our tired and aching bodies. As I further enjoyed the bath, I was soon overcome with an even stronger sense of invulnerability, as if I could stand up to Sisla herself and defeat her in combat. Aided by the strange experience I had within the Hall of Visions and that silvery blue mist, which helped me recognize why the ultimates sought their power and glory and all but turned me into an ultimate myself, the sense of euphoria was overwhelming and I was almost disappointed when we were finally asked to leave the pool and dry ourselves off. Stepping out of the pool, warm towels awaited and we quickly dried ourselves off, purified now by the warm bath. My party was then allowed to put all our equipment back on, strapping on armor and ensuring that our weapons and supplies were safe and secure. It appeared there had been no reason to fret over removing all our equipment in the first place. High Priest Cocolata then addressed our party, Darius standing alongside him holding a small, open chest. Now that you are cleansed and purified, we only need to mix the rust monster blood you found with water to create some strong acid. Here are 10 vials of water, just place a few drops of blood into each vial, that should provide all the acid you will need. Darius lowered the small chest he was holding so I could see the vials of water. Dropping some blood into each of the 10 vials, I then shook each vial and secured the newly made acid. The time has come, High Priest Cocolata then announced. Once you pass through the doors to the west, you will find our beloved one plant encircled by a wretched curse somehow placed there by the inner circle. To undo the curse, douse it with the acid you've found, then use your Speak with Plants scroll to gain the trust of the one plant and help it befriend you. We are grateful to serve. I responded, feeling quite honored to have been chosen to undo something the inner circle had perpetuated upon the ultimates. High Priest Cocolata smiled and nodded, providing more information a moment later. Beware, as the curse is alive, and it will try to destroy you. Use the acid as quickly as you can, and once you make your way through, use the scroll to reawaken the one plant, at which point it should protect you. Do this, and you will be rewarded beyond your wildest dreams. Cocolata bowed to our party, then the three escorted us to the door to the west. And that's a wrap of episode number 44, Gep Power Tower Dungeon Part 4. Expect additional episodes every few weeks as the story continues.